Hello and welcome to the Blue Turtle Management and Consulting web-based forum. You're watching episode 2, and today we're going to show you how to perform different types of client background checks. This video will cover the following questions. What is a background check? Why do architects need to research their clients? How can you research a client? What information are you looking for when researching a client? How much does a credit check cost? And we'll also look at what permission is required to check an individual or company's background. So let's start with what is a background check. Well, a background check is the process of researching an individual or company's financial and business records, thus allowing you to predict how that individual or company may manage their future contractual obligations and responsibilities. So why do architects and architectural firms need to perform background checks with new potential clients? Well, because not all clients will honor their contractual agreement and pay on time and in full. And because not being paid on time and in full would cost your firm money and erode your profit margins. Profit erosion can happen in many ways, which are not always immediately obvious. For example, you may lose money through the loss of interest on fees that would have been in your account if you had been paid on time and in full. You may lose money because of the time required to write letters, track invoices and request delinquent payments. Or in extreme cases, you may lose money by having to employ debt collection agencies or legal advisors. Incidentally, a debt collection agency typically costs around 10 to 50% of the debt that they're collecting, and in Sydney you can expect to pay anywhere from about $200 up for a junior solicitor. So you can see how the fees associated with collecting overdue debts can soon add up. Also, it's interesting to note that when requesting payment of delinquent fees, it's very hard to receive 100% of the amount due. You may find that you're only able to recover a portion of the invoice, which once again will be another cost to your business. Architects also need to perform background checks because cash flow problems can impact firms' ability to borrow money. And if you're unable to borrow money, it can be very difficult to grow the business. So ultimately, cash flow problems will either damage or destroy your business. According to the US Small Business Administration, over 50% of small businesses fail in the first year, largely because of cash flow problems. According to D&B credit experts, a business files for bankruptcy every 8 minutes and a corporation fails every 3 minutes. Also, research shows that nearly 46% of Australian companies delay paying their creditors. That means that nearly half your clients will delay paying. As you can see, the statistics are really quite alarming. However, you can take steps to avoid becoming one of the statistics, and this really is what this episode is all about. So when performing background checks, exactly what information are you looking for? Well, the information that you're looking for will vary depending on the type of business relationship and the size and type of project that you're working on. However, ideally, you're looking for information that will confirm the following. Firstly, that the information that your client has provided you today is true and accurate and current. You'll also want confirmation that they have the necessary experience or some experience to complete the project. You'd also like to know that they have sufficient funds or access to sufficient funds to complete the project, and that they have a history of paying suppliers on time and in full. So you're probably wondering, how do you get answers to all these questions? Well, the first step is to review the information that you have about the project and the client. Most firms have some type of client questionnaire that they use to collect information about new clients and new project inquiries. The one that I'm using here is the Client Inquiry Form from Chapter 3 of the Architect's Guide to Fees and Contracts. If you do not have a client questionnaire or a client inquiry form, I highly recommend making one. The questionnaire really helps to make sure you collect all the relevant data from your clients during your first meeting with them in an efficient and effective manner. Incidentally, also clients are much more inclined to answer questions when they are printed on a form such as this. I'm not sure why it is, it just seems less personal and more professional. Now, once you have this form completed, the form will provide you with some great information. For example, knowing if your client has engaged the services of an architect before, and knowing if your client owns the site, are really key indicators to exactly where your client is in this whole project. But it will also help you to manage your risk and allow you to decide what type of background check to perform. So let's take a look at what sort of background checks you can perform. Well, obviously there's the traditional method of contacting the references provided by your client. If they weren't able to provide a reference of an architect, maybe they've worked with engineers or even tradespeople in the industry, and you can try calling those people up. If, however, there aren't any references, you might want to move to the second option, which is performing a Google search. Here you can simply take your client's company name or the client name or both, put them into Google and find out what the search results come out of that. But what do you do if there's no references, or the references aren't good, and the Google search turns up nothing, well, then you can think about paying for the financial information, and this can be done by buying a credit check or something of that nature. So if you are going to perform a credit check, well, how do you do that? Well, I used to manage construction loans in California, and we were trained to use a company called Dun & Bradstreet, and I guess I've just stuck with this company throughout my career, and I've continued to use them over and over again. But there are other companies out there, and the reason I use Dun & Bradstreet is mainly because they have a good reputation in the industry. They've been around since the mid-1800s, and they work in over 200 countries, so I think they're as good as any other company that you'll find out there. Now, and in order to show you how to check out a client's credit history, let's go to the Dun & Bradstreet site in Australia, and that's www.dnb.com.au. Now, first of all, you're going to have to decide if you either are going to check an individual or a company, or maybe you need to check both. If you're going to check an individual through the Australian site, then the Commonwealth privacy laws require you to become a member. This is only for individual checks, however, it's not for company checks. The cost of membership is around Australian $279 a year at the time of making this recording. And like I say, you won't need to pay that fee if you're just checking a company. You will also have to pay additional fees of around $30 for each report that you purchase once you become a member. Buy as many reports as is deemed necessary. And you become a member by calling client services at 13 23 33 or emailing clientservice@dnb.com.au. Now, there are 4 different types of credit checks that you can perform for individuals. I would suggest going with the public record inquiry check, and I have 2 reasons for this. Firstly, because as an architect, typically you'll not be lending money to any of your clients. You won't be extending credit. You'll be performing some work and hopefully getting paid for the work that you do. And secondly, because you do not need to seek permission from your client to perform a public record inquiry check. With the other 3 options available through this website, you will actually need to seek written approval from the individual that you are checking. Now, obviously, because it's a public record inquiry, you can access the information through the public records, which are probably for free. Really, what you're paying for here is the convenience of getting the information within the minutes rather than trolling through a host of public record sites. And that's the benefit of using someone like Dun & Bradstreet. Now, here is an example of what a public record inquiry report from the Dun & Bradstreet site looks like. And you can check out examples of the other reports on the site too. You can see from this report the numbers of summons, judgments and bankruptcies your client has experienced over the past 7 years. And further down the report here you can see or get details on the information about those summons, judgments and bankruptcies. Now, as previously mentioned, you are going to want to use your judgment when it comes to reviewing all this data. If an individual has experienced a bankruptcy, then this does not mean you should immediately avoid working with them. But you should exercise some caution with how you manage invoices and payments for your work, and we'll talk more about that later. Now let's go back to the home page and we can have a look at the company credit check. Remember that you do not have to subscribe to purchase a company credit check, so it makes it somewhat easier to do. Once again, when looking into company background checks, you have a number of options available to you. As you can see from this list, some checks are free, while others have to be purchased. Now, I would suggest the payment risk report, as this will be the most applicable to architectural firms completing projects with typical appointment structures. Payment risk report includes a powerful payment predictor, and it also includes insight into payment patterns, which is really the essence of why you are performing a background check. You want assurance your client will pay you on time and in full. However, if much of your work is achieved on a success fee basis, for example, if you are thinking about teaming up with a development company and providing design services for a percentage of the overall project profits, then your risk is going to be much greater. So you may want to order the financial risk report, as the financial risk report predicts the likelihood that the company, the developer, will fail in the next 12 months or survive in the next 12 months. So here is a copy of the payment risk report that I recently purchased from Dun & Bradstreet's site. Incidentally, this report costs 62 Australian dollars to purchase. If you wanted to buy the financial risk report that we mentioned earlier, that costs 172 Australian dollars at the time of making this episode. So as you can see, the public records report is a lot cheaper to purchase, and there's another benefit. So for privacy reasons, I've blacked out the names and personal information of this client, However, you can see from this report that you can confirm the contact and legal status of the company, and then down here, if we scroll down, you can clearly see from this visual graphic here that Dun & Bradstreet do not believe that this specific company will pay on time or in full. If you read this, it says they clearly show the company to be a significant risk. We can also see, if we scan down further, from the dynamic delinquency score trend chart here, that they have recently encountered payment problems. Another interesting thing to note from this report is that they define delinquent payments as anything 90 days and older, which in terms of architecture is a very long period of time to be delinquent on a payment. So the next question is, what do you do with all this information? Well, once again, it's time to exercise some judgment based on the size of the project, type of firm, and level of service that you're providing. There are various ways that you can help avoid payment disputes, so let's discuss a couple of them. As previously mentioned, just because a company's experienced a bad financial track record or something does not mean you should immediately disqualify them. You will, however, want to tailor your fee proposals and contractual terms and conditions to that specific client. So here are some ideas about how things you can do to improve your fee proposals and contracts. First of all, you can request a mobilization payment. Mobilization payments are a great way of demonstrating or allowing your client to demonstrate their commitment to the project. If you find out from your background checks your client has a poor financial history, then you may want to increase the mobilization payment. If you typically ask for 5%, maybe you want to increase to 10 or 15%. Another thing you can do is request payment on a regular basis, such as a monthly payment. Avoid waiting to the end of the work stages to receive payment, as this could typically be 2 or 3 months out, or sometimes even longer on large projects. You will also want to flag this client as a risk, so that instead of having your contract say monthly payments and then you forgetting about it, you really want to flag them and keep on top of that monthly payment schedule. Another way of encouraging timely payments is by offering discounts for early payment of invoices. Once again, I like to introduce things of this nature where you perhaps encourage people to do the right thing rather than try and penalize them for doing the wrong thing. I think it makes for a win-win situation for both parties. And then finally, this is getting back to basics here, but try not to hand work over until you've received evidence that payment has been received. Now, I know everyone's aware of this, but very few people actually practice it in their day-to-day business, so I thought it was worth mentioning. Also, while we're on the subject, if your client is unhappy with your payment terms and they try to negotiate them out of your contract or out of your fee proposal, you can always try printing off a version of the background check that you have purchased from Dun & Bradstreet. When entering into negotiations, if you present the information that you've got, then it shifts the dynamic of the negotiation, if you like, and it puts more onus on them to say, look, this is something that if you can change, if you can avoid this, if you can resolve whatever has caused you to have a bad credit, then perhaps we can revisit our payment terms. So anyway, let's just try and wrap this up. In conclusion, background checks are well worthwhile. They're a good investment and time well spent. They will help you avoid costly disputes and stresses associated with delinquent payments. They can help you tailor your contractual payment terms and fee proposals to individual projects and individual clients. Also, background checks can help you negotiate payment terms with clients. And basically, they'll help you run a more financially successful business. So I'd just like to finish by saying thank you very much for watching this episode. Before I go, I would just like to say that if you would like to learn more about writing fee proposals, then we will be discussing the subject of fees in more detail later in the series. Also, I'd like to mention that we publish information that can help architects write better fee proposals and understand typical contractual terms. For more details, take a look at the Architect's Guide to Fees and Contracts, which is available through our website at www.blueturtlemc.com/portfolio. Bye for now.